Very good. It's 1:30, and so we will begin our liquor control agenda for today. We have 4 items on the agenda. Number 1 is to approve the minutes of the October 20th, 2021 meeting. If everybody's had a chance to review the information ahead of time, and if there's any changes or corrections, otherwise we will accept a motion.
Move to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Agenda item number 2, review liquor applications. 2A, application for the issuance of a Class VWB alcoholic beverage license to Cellar 624 LLC, doing business as Cellar 624. The venue on Main to be located at 624 Main Avenue, Suite 1. Steve will get us started. Steve.
Was that enough of a tongue twister?
A little bit.
Good afternoon, Liquor Board members. So this is the license that we created recently for the business that will be a wine tasting venue that is set up primarily for educational purposes. And now that we have the license put in place and we've gone through that process, we received the application and processed it. A couple of the owners there and the manager, there were no problems in the background or anything like that. But there was one owner that a few things kind of came up, and just I think the chief is thinking that this might be a good point to kind of bring you guys in and the decision making on whether or not a license should be granted with that person on there.
Great. Chief.
Good afternoon, board. I think you all received a copy of the letter relative to one of the applicants with some concerns about some previous DUIs from 2011, driving under suspension. One of those involved a fleeing from the officer for which he was arrested but not charged. Again, it's a little more of an aggravated incident. And so in looking through some of the West Fargo information, they did a background in 2016, and there's another driving under suspension that was in 2015 in Fargo, but it looks like it was negotiated down to a non-criminal driving without a license, so they didn't pick it up on the background piece. But again, it's outside the general scope, but I think it was significant enough to the operations at the time that these offenses occurred. That individual was in fact employed at another liquor establishment, and even in reading the report, told the officer he knows exactly how much, that he was in fact probably over the limit, and he was. And so just from that perspective, there has been some time lapse, but I wanted to bring that to your attention.
And so, Steve, do you mind if I ask you a question? What are our options with this? Do you mind kind of just reviewing those with us?
You could approve the application as submitted. You could determine that one of the applicants isn't fit to be on the liquor license and request that person be removed. That may affect the ownership of the business, and they may have to go back and kind of reconsider. I suppose you could also deny the application in its entirety and move forward from there.
So, and anybody else has a question, feel free to jump in. Go ahead, Lydia.
Looking through the documents that you sent out earlier, it sounded like you had a conversation with this person, and they were, was that more about the event that happened in 2010, 2011? I think they said that they've, been on the up and up since then.
Yeah, that was
2015
most
one.
current investigator, Sergeant Nestler's conversation with him, yes.
And that was with regard to the 2010 or 2011?
2011 incidents, yes.
Okay. So did they, and they didn't mention the 2015 event in that call?
No, that didn't come up, and I think maybe because it became a non-criminal event that it went off it wouldn't be something that would come up in that search. And so actually there was one of the other offenses that he forgot to mention initially, and when we asked him about that, said, "Oh, I just kind of forgot to mention that." I believe it was the, let's see here, quick note here.
While you're looking at...
The 2011 DUI in Fargo, he did not mention initially on the application. Indicated he'd been going through a rough time, 2010 and 2011. Apologize for not putting it on there.
This lack of being forthcoming is concerning to me, because the 2015 thing seems relevant.
Yeah.
I would agree with that too, and it seems to me that we have set a precedent and there are two issues on this one in particular that caused a revocation of a license for Club Africa, so I think we need to consider that that's part of this as well.
And I guess the one thing we're fortunate, from my perspective, is there's other ownership, and so we can remove those and they could still proceed with it if we wish to. It gives us a little more flexibility. I don't know if you agree with that. But go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Steve, would it be proper to ask them the percentages of ownership? Because I think in this case, there's probably a very much majority owner, and this fellow that has had the problems, I believe, is the chef. And it's not unusual for people to eventually get a small percentage of the business. I don't know if that makes a difference, legally, et cetera, but is that a proper question for us to ask? What percentage ownership?
I think you can ask whatever questions that you feel are important in making the determination. If it's proprietary or some way they feel they shouldn't answer, then they would have that option. I'm not sure, is he here? Yes?
If you don't mind, Nancy, is that appropriate if we ask a question like that? Like, what is the ownership breakdown, or is that an inappropriate question?
I don't know that I'd say appropriate or inappropriate, but they do have to identify a license owner if they own at least 5% of the license. And so if they own 5% of the license, then that person should also then be qualified to own the license. So if they own a smaller percentage, they don't need to be identified on the license. If they are identified, they would need to qualify to own the license.
All right, thank you.
So again, Commissioner, the applicant is here if he may wish to address the board.
If you want to, if you wouldn't mind coming up to that podium and just giving your name, we'd appreciate it. And if you want to tell us a little bit about the business, we don't want to make you feel like we're coming out to, but just kind of give us a summary. First, identify yourself, but then give us a little summary, and then we'll have some questions for you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your time. My name is Mike Bald. I'm the executive chef at Maxwell's in West Fargo. And cellar that is being proposed to you in Fargo, yes, I am 1/3 owner in that company. And operating in West Fargo, background check went back 5 years, not exceeding that. And on the application, yes, I was in a bit of a hurry. I didn't do due diligence on my part in taking time to go back that far to dig into 2010, 2011. I had a rough year personally, and after the second DUI, I recognized that it was a major issue. Nobody got hurt, but I sought out professional help immediately. I went through numerous programs, mostly with counselors, and determined that it was high anxiety and that I was using alcohol at that time to self-medicate. And since then, I'm on professional medication. I see a doctor twice a year to go over if there's any changes, any concerns. Other than that, that's pretty much all I have for you.
Do we have any questions? And if it's okay, I'll start out with one. So obviously you're 1/3 owner. And so if we did something where we removed you, that would have a major impact from your perspective. Can you talk about that?
Yes, sir. I would have to talk to my other business owners on if that shuts the project down. But if it's up to the liquor board, I would be willing to take myself off of the license. the seller isn't. My focus is on Maxwell's, and I just want to be the chef at Maxwell's, and I understand your concerns. I really do. The past is the past, and I can't change that. But I want to let you guys know that I've been working very hard moving forward, and I don't see, for myself, any concern. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that there would be concern for leaving me on the liquor license. If it was something to where, upon my word, if something was to anything, the slightest little hiccup, I would surrender it willingly.
Well, I will say, just before we have any more questions, I appreciate your honesty. Obviously, you didn't have to say any of that, and so I really appreciate that. And obviously, all of us here, we all have things in our past, and we live and learn, and so I appreciate what you talked about. So, and obviously, wish you well. I do think we have lots of options, and I do think we could do a temporary thing, because obviously, some of this is 10 years ago and right on the borderline. And so we have lots of options as far as a board. So, but once again, I appreciate, obviously it's a lot different world than it was 10 years ago. And so I think for a lot of people that meant a lot. It meant a lot for me, for you to reveal and talk about all those things, because that took a lot of courage. So thank you.
One more thing, actually, I was I was going to pull my daughter out of school today, that actions that you make today will greatly, positive or negatively, affect your legacy for the rest of your life. And being here and in judgment in front of peers in the city of Fargo, it's very difficult. It's embarrassing, but I almost brought her here today to show her what your decisions today will affect the rest of your life.
That's an awesome message. Do you have any other questions from any of the board members?
Just thank you for your honesty. I really appreciate that. And I have one question. So if we approve this, and if for whatever reason there would be some issues in the next year that would complicate what took place here, we would have the opportunity to address that in the license renewal. Is that correct?
So not as the ordinance currently stands, but the brown bag that we've scheduled for coming up here in December will be the first step towards implementing some of the things that you're talking about, which would be an annual review of all of the license holders, all of the people listed. And so if something were to happen, like you're saying, and that would negatively affect this, then at license renewal, we would have the chance to say, we're not going to renew this because of these reasons.
Can I ask Steve, they don't have a manager listed, and so do they have a? Go
Yes,
ahead.
they do.
They do.
Ellen Wall is the manager.
Okay.
And if you remember, she's the one that
Yes.
came forward with the whole idea and the concept and everything.
I apologize for that. That was my mistake. So, any other comments or questions?
I guess my perspective is that these items are 10 years old. Obviously, time has passed and people get wiser. And from my perspective, even before we had the conversation, I wasn't that concerned about 10-year-old items. So I wouldn't be in favor of changing anything. I'd move forward with granting it the way it was requested.
Is that a motion?
It's a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second it. I get to do that. I don't have to give up the gavel. The mayor told me that, so I appreciate his wisdom. So we have a motion and a second, but obviously we need to have some more discussion. And I guess one of the questions I have, Steve, is is there some way we can conditionally, let's say a year from now, we can review how things are going? Is that an option, something like that?
Generally, we don't do a conditional issuance, but, we can certainly put it on the list of things to review and have discussion at some point in the future, I guess.
If I could just chime in a little bit to help you with that one. If there's violations that occur, obviously, I would be bringing it before the board and allow you to take action on the license based on those violations.
Okay.
And then just for your information, because I forgot to just make sure you understand this also, that his license is currently valid. So his prior suspensions are complete.
Very good, thank you. And Nancy, you look like you want to add some more to the conversation.
I would just add that we don't have a provision for conditional licenses, and I would concur with the chief that if there are violations that would result in consequences to the license, or as we're looking at the reissuance background checks, that those would be not retroactive to the, what's before you now.
And I do think this reflects these potential changes, how good that will be. Because I do think it's important for these to be reviewed, because things happen each year. And so to have it kind of reviewed instead of reviewing it one time and then basically not looking at it again. So I think that will be a positive change. So we're looking forward to the updates in the future, so. And I know you have lots on your plate, so, but do we have that scheduled, the
14th?
If
It's
you don't-
scheduled for December 14th, I believe, at noon.
Awesome. I appreciate that, and I think we'll look forward to that. Any other comments or questions?
Only just a comment to say, please make sure for applicants that be forthcoming. Share the information that we need to have, and that makes this a lot easier, so that we don't have to bring it all out.
Agreed. Any other comments or questions? Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Congratulations, and once again, I want to thank you. That was very meaningful, and I think your daughter will learn a lot from it, and I think she'll be very proud of you.
I'll do my best, sir. Thank you.
You bet. All right, moving on. Wow, that was a little bit emotional. Usually liquor control. Come on now, we're just supposed to be. All right, number 3, request from the Fargo Park District and FA Golf licensees to change food requirement to 25% annually. Steve?
So I've been in conversation with the Park District, with Carolyn Butane from the Park District, regarding the golf course operators. And, you know, we've had some discussions, and, you know, let me back up a little bit. First of all, I want to say that state law does not allow a municipality or a political subdivision to hold a liquor license. If that did happen, or if that were allowed, you know, if there was a change at state law, then the Fargo Park District could own and operate, or could run the facilities at the 3 golf courses that they run, which are Edgewood, Osgood, and Rose Creek. What we've seen in the past, that we created a license called an FA golf license, and so it's specific for a golf course. But especially at Osgood, we've seen it, you know, probably the longest that an operator has lasted there has been 2 years. And so, you know, the Osgood Golf Course has been open for a long time, and they've probably gone through 8 or 10 different operators in that time. And so Carolyn and I were having discussions about what we could do that would maybe allow the golf courses to be more profitable, so that they could stay in business. Now, Osgood, if you'll remember, failed a food percentage requirement. And so that was one of the things that kind of got us discussing that item. So they did accept the penalty, and they have been closing an hour before they're scheduled to close for the last 6 months. So with that, I want to just kind of go through what the FA Golf current requirements are. And it's 25% of the receipts need to be through meals from food during the golf season. And then during the winter season, which we have listed as, let's see, November through April. Anyway, through the winter season, then they're supposed to operate as a restaurant and hit 50-50. And so the other items with that FA golf license are that it needs to be at least a 9-hole golf course, and that golf course has to be a USGA approved golf course. So we wrote that in so that it's not like a 9-hole putt and go or something like that, you know, put in a little a golf course in the middle of your restaurant. And so they're clear that there are differences in this license versus a traditional FA license, a food beverage license. But I did write a motion, a requested motion or a suggested motion that we amend the license to drop the food percentage. And subsequent to that, we've had additional conversations. And really at this time, I think what we're going to propose is just a receive and file, and then kind of put it on the board maybe to help us kind of think of a way that we can modify the license in a way that still respects all the other licenses, but allows the, the event of more profitability for that FA golf course or for the golf courses. And so, that we don't have that continued turnover of the operators.
So Steve, let me make a couple of quick comments. I think we have to be very careful because I noticed the representative of Southbound Poorhouse is here, and I'm sure he's going, what the hell are you talking about? This is exactly what I was saying. And so I think the precedent, if we change this to help their business be successful, they're going to say, okay, I'll raise my hand and me next. And so I think we have to be careful. It's not our business that they're not successful businesses. Our rules are our rules, and it's the same thing. I live in North Fargo. The Edgewood, that restaurant has gone through multiple ownerships, and I wish they were successful, but they're not. But that's not the liquor control boards. And so I think we have to be very careful that we're changing our rules to, that's just my perspective. And I'm sorry for preaching, but I do think precedent is very important. And this is exactly what we just talked about with another group that we're not going to do. And so I do think it's a broken business model, but that's the Park District's problem, not the Liquor Control Board for the city of Fargo. That's just my view.
I don't disagree. And so I guess at this point, what I would like to do is just do a receive and file to make you aware of the situation, and so that we can start working on ways that maybe they're, so an example would be like the FA entertainment license. The FA entertainment license allows them to consider their ticket sales as part of their, so that they're not strictly a bar, they're doing something else. The problem with this one is that the golf receipts go to the Park District and not to the restaurant operator or the, the licensee. So anyway, just trying to come up with ways that we can work in partnership with the golf course or with the Park District to find a way that maybe we can come with a solution.
So Steve, you're awesome and you do a great job. But I do think you're doing too much to try to help people. Our job is to set the rules, not to ensure that they're successful businesses. And I do appreciate you, we try to, I think it's a good thing, but it's like at a certain point, it's the business model of the Park District, and that's not us. And so do you get what I'm saying? I apologize, but it's just one of those things where it's a bad model, and it seems like we're trying to figure out a way for them to be successful when it should be them. That's just my 2 cents.
So from an economic standpoint, if we're reduced to 25%, how does that help the business? I mean, there's a penalty in place for Osgood 1 hour early closing, but it's not going to change the receipts that much, is it? Or I'm missing something on how the math.
No, that's just the standard penalty. There's with that part of the ordinance, it's basically close an hour early, and then I'm blanking on exactly what the second penalty is, but the third penalty is revocation of the license. So if they don't, aren't able to meet those food percentages, we basically take the license away, in about a year and a half.
If we drop it to 25%, again, how does that help their business from turning over? Because they're at 50% half the year.
Right.
Then we give them a 25% situation during the summer months when admittedly guys probably take some beers on the cart and they don't go in and have, a steak afterwards. I just don't see that the 6 months where we require 50% that it's going to help.
And it's possible that it wouldn't. So I think I at this point, rather than acting on this, I think the thing to do is to just continue discussions and see, what other alternatives might be out there. And maybe, the operators that are running those establishments can come forward with some ideas that would help us to figure out a way forward. Again, it's kind of like with COVID, we didn't want to penalize people because they were going through a hard time. And I kind of look at that similarly here, that we have a license and trying to work with, again, the park district to find a way to, make it so that they don't have this constant turnover. So, and I hear you loud and clear, Commissioner.
So Steve, once again, so I'm a small business owner, and this business model is not set up to be successful. The park board owns the building,
Right.
leases the space to the restaurant, and so the restaurant business is very competitive. It's just, and so I think it would be great to meet with them, but I think a lot of it is like the park district, they need to figure out a business model that, and I'm not sure we need to jump into that. I don't know. Any other comments? And I apologize. Go ahead, Rob.
Thanks, Commissioner. To John's question, I think is really important here because, in my mind, FAs were set up to be restaurants that have full liquor service, et cetera. When I see somebody trying to change the numbers, they're trying to increase their volume, and they know that the best way to increase that volume is through beverage alcohol sales. Because beverage alcohol sales, it is easy to increase your volume if you want to drop the price. And that's exactly what we want to try to avoid. That's the pandering. Now, I don't believe in the city setting people's prices or happy hours, but on the radio a month ago, there was a venue in town that was running a happy hour for women, all you can drink wine for $10. Okay, that is exactly what we want to avoid. So I think it's important that we, keep integrity in this FAA concept, that it's a restaurant that is also serving beverage alcohol. And we know that that's a safer situation than, happy hour till midnight or whatever. So I think that's kind of what people think, John, is that if they can lower that requirement, they can really go after the alcohol business.
I tend to agree. I don't really like the idea of dropping the food percentage requirements for the same reason. I am interested. I think there could be some value in the comparison between, an entertainment license, though. I wouldn't mind hearing more about it, but I am not really interested in dropping the food requirement.
Yep.
Very good. Any other comments? Otherwise, we will need a motion to receive and file. Steve, is that what you're looking at from us?
Yeah, let's do that.
So do we have a motion to receive and file? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 4, Police Department Monthly Report, the general report. Chief.
Thank you, sir. Absent any questions, I don't think I have anything specific to discuss. I look forward to our meeting next month because there's things related to some of the issues we've discussed that I think we can start dealing with more effectively. So unless you have some specific questions, that's it for me.
I don't have, Kay, do you have?
I read through and I noticed one venue in particular had 1, 2, 3, 4,
Several.
5, 6, 7
Yes.
calls, 2 of which indicated in the police report that they were intoxicated.
Yes.
Highly intoxicated. So I'm interested in looking at what tools are available to whomever to look into this.
Yeah, and I think that fits in with the brown bag because one of the issues in one of the instances was that the video was either not available or was not discernible. And when we talk about requirements, things of that nature, having some requirements would be beneficial. But we run into that, and then we've talked a little bit about some parameters, oversight in terms of what some of the bouncers do or do not do. I think there's a lot of pieces in here that, yeah, at this juncture, we can't do a lot about, but will fit well into that conversation next month.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Chief, I would say thank you very much. The reports, we didn't do that in the past that you do now. I think we all really appreciate that. And you being available to answer questions for us, we appreciate that. So thank you for that. I would say we're making lots of good progress and we still got a ways to go.
Yep. No, we're making a lot of progress. So I appreciate the board's adeptness at what they do. Everyone's very involved and you're reading and paying attention. So that makes it worthwhile.
Really, the only deadwood on this is the chair. Other than that, everything is going pretty well. So any other comments for today? Otherwise, that's the end of our meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon and we are adjourned.